Welcome to the Sam and Sam Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I am one of your co-hosts for the Sam and Sam Show, Sam McGinnis. Right now, I'd like to welcome on my other co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm doing great, McGinnis. How about you?
Doing all right. I had a rough Stanley Cup, though. We'll get to that. But today we're going to actually start with an NFL update. We've had a lot of NFL action today, including Tom Brady for 5 touchdowns. Big turnaround from previous weeks. So why don't you start telling us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an epic Sunday for the NFL right now. Tom Brady, you mentioned that was one of the best performances, I think, of the entire day. Certainly a great turnaround for him because I was beginning to worry and wonder about what we were going to see from him. He threw an interception early in that game, and then he followed up by throwing 5 touchdowns, so they were absolutely fine. I was also impressed with how Justin Herbert played, the quarterback opposite him. Obviously, he's a rookie. I think it was his only second start of his career. And with the exception of one interception, I think he had basically a perfect passer rating throughout the game. So Herbert had an incredible game as well. I'm really excited to see what this rookie class of quarterbacks is going to do. So we already seen Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the first rookie quarterback to throw for, I think it was 3 consecutive games with 300 passing yards. So he's the first one to do that. Herbert's the first rookie quarterback with 900 yards in his first 3 games. I mean, he's the second one besides Cam Newton. So we've seen a couple of record-setting quarterbacks already from this rookie class. I'm really interested to see where they go from here. But right now, both Herbert and Burrow, they're just on bad teams. They can't win that way.
Speaking of wins, though, despite the fact that the Bengals have had a rough start to their year, Joe Burrow gets his first win.
Yeah, it comes against Jacksonville. This is really their best shot at getting a win, honestly. I mean, after you tie the Philadelphia Eagles, who are basically giving away free turnovers with Carson Wentz at this point, once you tie them, I really started to worry about Bengals actually getting a win or not, but they really pulled it out here with the big one. Managed to beat Jacksonville. I don't see a very high ceiling for this team, I'll be honest. I really like Joe Burrow. I like T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd's been great. But Adrian Green has been disappointing. The offensive line outside Jonah Williams is atrocious. And that defense, they have a few good players, but really not enough to pull off a serious season at this point.
Well, and as we mentioned, despite all of that, Joe Burrow could very well win the Rookie of the Year award.
Yeah, I mean, the rookie season is kind of coming down at this point to me. Joe Burrow is probably in the lead. I don't really think there's anyone challenging immediately for that. Justin Herbert, depending on how he plays throughout the rest of the year, could get to that point. I know Mike's gonna get mad at me for saying those 2 names in the same sentence, but really, I mean, statistically, Herbert's performed well at this point, and that's really what matters. The wins, neither of those teams are going to win. So whether these quarterbacks are elite or not, I think Joe Burrow can go out there and win you games, especially in the fourth quarter. I don't know that Herbert can do that. But really, is that going to be part of the analysis for the Rookie of the Year award? Probably not. So I think Joe Burrow has an advantage. But if Herbert just goes out and puts up great numbers, I wouldn't be shocked if he actually steals his award down the line.
Yeah, and again, it's always curved towards quarterbacks, unfortunately, for every other position that there ever is. But in that sense, Joe Burrow still would be deserving of the rookie quarterbacks that we've seen.
Oh, yeah, especially with the way he's working with. I mean, he's putting up
300. Mixon and A.J. Green, sure, but still, what offensive line are you working with?
He isn't. I'll be honest, be shocked if he gets through all 16 games this year without getting hurt, because that offensive line has been terrible. Outside Jonah Williams, I said, that's a horrible offensive line. Most of those guys would be backups in our positions that are on the NFL. Bad offensive line. A.J. Green actually has been pretty bad this year. He's really showing us an age. He's a possession receiver at this point, and he really hasn't transitioned well into that role. Tyler Boyd's been much better. So there are weapons there. Joe Mixon had an incredible day today, and that's really what the Bengals need moving forward. They need to have a running game because they haven't had actually the offensive line's been so bad for the first 3 weeks. But once they actually were able to block Jacksonville, Joe Mixon had an incredible day, and that's what they need. When Joe Mixon runs well, Cincinnati is going to win games. That just doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and I think he ran for 3 touchdowns today, correct?
Yeah, he scored 3 times. And he really, like I said, when he's on fire, he's one of the probably top 7, top 5 running backs in the NFL when he's hot. The issue is that it takes a lot to get there because Jacksonville's offensive line is so bad. And they're not really equal to any offensive line in the NFL right now. They're probably one of the worst. And Mixon, 2 rushing touchdowns today, 1 receiving, over 151. Well, he had 151 rushing yards. That's exactly what you need from a superstar running back. He produced. The Bengals pulled out a win. Well, against elite teams, like against the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive front, that Bengals line is not going to be able to block for Joe Mixon.
And another unfortunate news for both the Bengals and every other team in the NFL is we've started seeing positive cases within the NFL of COVID-19.
Yeah, now to this point, we're kind of lucky because it's mostly isolated within Tennessee. It's been numerous Tennessee Titans players and staff members. They've gotten new positive tests every day for, I believe, the last 4 or 5 days at this point. I forget how long it's been going on, but they've had multiple consecutive days with new tests. That's why they postponed the Pittsburgh Steelers Tennessee Titan game that was scheduled for this weekend. They've moved that back to week 7, and hopefully Tennessee players will be recuperated and no longer sick. However, they got new positive tests just this morning, which means the Titans can't get into their training facility until they have multiple days in a row with no positive tests. So now they're locked out of their facility for at least another 2 days potentially, and that could put their week 5 game in jeopardy. And if they miss 2 weeks in a row, we're gonna have to see some serious scheduling shenanigans for the NFL to actually put together a full regular season.
Yeah, the MLB had some trouble with this too when they were running through their regular season with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the NFL just put in another week. Like seriously, add in week 18. You don't have to put in another game necessarily. Make it an extra bye week for the teams that need it. But you might have to put in another week, and you just have to accept that if you're the NFL. There's no way to avoid this situation because it spreads so easily. The Titans, that whole locker room is likely going to be quarantined for a long time here. Even when we get to next week and they're still in quarantine, you got to move on. The NFL is not going to stop for Tennessee, but at the same point, they're going to have to make sure every team has 16 games. I say just add another week. Give Pittsburgh back its midseason bye because I want that midseason bye. Give them back the midseason bye and just continue moving on with the rest of the league. I think we're at a point where really one more week won't make a difference. Just add another bye week.
Well, and that will give you a chance for makeup games in case some teams do miss games and can't make it up during the normal schedule that they have.
Yeah, and that's why really you need that extra week. But another interesting thing, Cam Newton came down with this, and he seems to be the only one. He's the only one who's got positive so far. So it sounds like the Chiefs-Patriots game is going to happen tomorrow night. Monday night. It was originally scheduled for today. They moved it back to tomorrow night, so we're going to have 2 games tomorrow. Atlanta and Green Bay is also playing, which actually I enjoy. I enjoy having both those games that night, but I think that means Cam Newton's not going to be able to play tomorrow, which really hurts New England's chances, but you're not going to postpone a game just because one player is sick.
Yeah, it'd be no different if he was injured either.
Yeah.
You pretty much have to treat it the same, except instead of being around him as a team, you kind of have to leave him be.
Stay away.
The rest of the team does not need that. So, but we're going to move on now to the NHL. And this is the part at which I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, okay, yeah, that was wrong. So the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 beat the Dallas Stars, who looked – I was watching some of those games, and the worst part of it is Dallas could never get anything going. They would chuck the puck into the opposing team's area. They would chuck them into the Lightning's area, and they would get nothing going after that. It would just be a waste and a pointless useless of time, right? So I just watched that happen over and over and over, and then Tampa would come back down and they'd score, and they got Stamkos back. And Hedman won the Conn Smythe, by the way, which is, for those of you who don't know, the NHL's playoff MVP. But yeah, so we're going to get a little bit more into thoughts on that a little later because we've got some good stuff here with goaltenders actually in the NHL. I'm going to start with this one. Robin Lehner is re-signed for the Vegas Golden Knights. 5 years, $25 million, which I personally think is great for Vegas. So let me paint the picture here. Vegas traded for Lehner around the trade deadline this year. Okay, Fleury wasn't performing all that well earlier this year. Granted, he did well during the playoffs, but they didn't start him all that much during the playoffs either. Lehner is a good, reliable goalie who they just re-signed for a long time to come. I personally think that's a golden place to be for the organization. Your thoughts?
No, I mean, it's great, especially you have a goaltender who's struggling. Having that extra man around there to kind of be a rotational piece you need him, or even a starter if you need him to in any given situation. I think it's much better to have those two guys, especially when you have an unknown with how a veteran goalkeeper is going to keep his level of play up moving into the future. My question is money-wise, because I'm more familiar with NBA salaries than NFL salaries, which are a little bit higher. How much is that for a goalkeeper? Or a goalkeeper might be more of a rotational piece than a full-time starter to play every single minute.
So you have starters and backups in the NHL, but they both get a certain number of games during the season. So it depends on how much you want to do with any specific goaltender. So the number of starts will vary depending on the goaltender, even if he's technically the starting goalie. As for money, the upper end goaltenders get paid around $10 million. That's
all right.
a year though. So he's getting paid $5 million. And he's a pretty good goaltender in the league. So I see this as an absolute win for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, and probably long-term deals, I'm guessing, in that situation where you're getting someone like this for just $5 million a year, that's probably a really good contract for you. You probably expect higher returns than what the value of that contract is actually worth. You're probably saving a lot of money there on a player like that.
Well, and that'll help the team as well if you're trying to get other pieces. That's just an in general rule, not necessarily in this case, but in general, it's nice to have that extra money saved over that you can use on other pieces. Now, this is also an interesting goaltender class specifically for free agency. You have Jacob Markstrom, Anton Khudobin, who actually was the goaltender who led the Stars to this Cup final, who ended up on the top saves in NHL history since, I think, 1950-something. He had over 700. Great performances by him, at least from the number of stops he made. And you've got Henrik Lundqvist. So you've got all these goaltenders in the mix who are all going to be thrown out onto the market. And the funny part about it is some of these goaltenders are going to could end up on teams that literally just jettisoned goaltenders that they had already.
Yeah, so there's going to be a little bit of like shuffling pretty much. You're going to see a little bit of guys playing musical chairs, sort of switching around teams and stuff like that. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's a possibility. For instance, I don't know I don't know if the Canucks are just going to go with Thatcher Demko then, or what's going to happen with that. But if they truly are losing Jacob Markstrom, I would want to re-sign him as the organization. That's where I would be at because he was a good goaltender this season. So hopefully for them, they have the ability to do that. If not, they're going to have to find another option.
Right, so when it comes down to like these free agent situations, it's always about the money, regardless of how much does a player want versus how much do you value them at. If the values don't add up, if you don't value a guy as much as money as he wants, you have to let him walk pretty much because you're not willing to spend that kind of money as a franchise when you have other holes or other pieces you need to fill.
Well, and here comes the question back to Robin Leonard. Did he sign with Vegas because he wanted to sign there, or because he knew no one else would give him the money, especially with all these free agents now flooding the market?
Well, we're seeing a similar thing with the NFL right now with running backs, where you're trying to get an extension, you're trying to get a new deal, but because it's so flooded, it's just so overloaded right now. You can't get the maximum value that you're looking for in a contract because there are so many other options out there. So you can just say, well, if you're asking for too much, we can find someone with better value. And then you see your own personal value drop and drop as long as you don't get re-signed. So signing a deal early might actually be beneficial because this prevents you from getting devalued by a large market.
Yeah, and I think that could potentially go for the NHL's trade deadline as well. If you get a piece earlier, you won't have to worry about paying extra for when you're desperate at the trade deadline.
Exactly. Once desperation comes into play, or a lack of desperation comes into play, you start seeing numbers change quite a bit.
All right. That's what we got for today when it comes to the NHL. But now we move on to the NBA. They're still in the NBA Finals, and so far, from what I have heard, it's looking pretty much about how we thought it was going to look.
It's unfortunate. I'm a Miami Heat fan, so I was really hoping this would go 6 or 7 games. I mean, we lost Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic in Game 1. Goran's our third best player. Bam's our second. Bam's an all-star. Should have been the most improved player of the year award winner this year. Losing both those guys, I mean, they're not available for Game 3. Like, Game 3 is on right now, and they're not available. So it's really difficult because you've got Jimmy Butler. You've got a rotation that works really well. This is honestly probably the perfect rotation to match up with the Lakers. I don't think there's another team in the NBA that can match it quite as well. Maybe the Clippers. If the Clippers have made it this far, which they couldn't, obviously, because only one team from the West could have made it. But outside the Clippers, this is probably the best team to match up with them. The issue is that you're missing Bam, so you're missing your starting center, and you're missing Goran Dragic, who at times has been your starting point guard, at times has been the spark plug off the bench for you. If you don't have those pieces, you really don't have a shot at winning the NBA Finals. And it's unfortunate because Jimmy Butler is playing at an all-NBA caliber level right now. He's been phenomenal. And this team has so many good pieces. I hate to see it go to waste because I know Goran Dragic is a free agent this offseason. So is Jay Crowder. Those were two key rotational players for the Heat. Losing those guys, I mean, I don't know if you're going to get back to the finals again with this crew.
And there's part of the unfortunate part right there is when you're watching players make history and then not winning their championship. Again, we saw this with the Stars, with both Pavelski and Anton Hudobin. They didn't win the cup, but they set some records. So it's unfortunate for any team, any player to set records and then not be able to win it all. Not to say that is to make those records, obviously to win it all, but it's unfortunate not to be able to do both.
Yeah, and on the other side for the NBA Finals, the Los Angeles Lakers have a 2-0 lead right now. They're playing Game 3. I don't think the Heat can match LeBron James and Anthony Davis. You can't contain them right now because the height mismatch. I mean, Bam would have been the ideal player to put on Dwight Howard or an Anthony Davis because of his versatility. Without him, you really don't have another player who fits that mold. As for LeBron, I mean, look, you can put Jimmy Butler on him, you can put Jay Crowder on him. It really doesn't matter who you put on LeBron. He's still going to get about 10 assists, 25 points per game. You really can't change that. The issue would have been, could you outcoach the Lakers? Because Alex Spoelstra is a much better coach than what the Lakers have. You could outcoach them, and could you just outgame them in a sense? Could you manage to go on streaks when they're cold? Could you do stuff like that? And the answer is, with a full team of Heat players, yes, you could. But with the current rotation, I don't think that's possible. We saw it in Game 2. The Heat had a chance early in that fourth quarter to take the lead, go out there, and potentially win the game. And they got cold late in the fourth. The Lakers went on a run and put the game out of reach. This is an opportunity for the Heat to win tonight and potentially climb back into the series. And then you get Bam and hopefully Gordon Dragic back in Game 4. It's really not looking good. If this is a title win for the Lakers, it's their first since Kobe Bryant and Paul Gasol. It would be the fourth of LeBron James' career, the first of Anthony Davis' career, and would continue moving those two players up the all-time list in terms of basically complete career resumes. And
with 7-game series, there are certain games that aren't required wins in my mind, but there are certain games that absolutely are. And I would think a Game 3 would certainly be that way because otherwise you have to win 4 games straight. And the following game would have to be the same thing because you'd still have to win 3 games straight. That's what I said when the Stars went to overtime with the Lightning, and then we're down 3-1 on the series. If you go down 3-1 on a series, it's very hard to come back from that.
Yeah, we have seen it happen in the NBA. We've seen it happen actually this playoffs.
Yeah,
twice already with the Nuggets, but we've only seen it happen once in the finals before. That was with LeBron and the Cavaliers going against the Golden State Warriors. It's very rare. You never want to go down 3-1. This is a must-win for the Heat. You go down 3-0. That's basically series at this point. I find it hard to believe, short of an injury to Anthony Davis, LeBron James, you wouldn't be able to come back from a 3-0. If you go 2-1, there's a real chance you go 6 or 7, which is what I'm hoping for. I'm still hoping for a title win, but I don't think that's gonna, like, realistically here. If we're telling me where am I going to place my betting money on, it's going to be on the Lakers and it's going to be on LeBron to win Finals MVP.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the NBA out of the way, we move on to college football. We're getting closer to Big Ten start. Your college football update.
Yeah, so we got the newest edition of the AP Top 25 poll, and of course it is the Clemson Tigers at number 1, again, deservingly so. Undefeated so far. Alabama basically went out and rolled over Texas A&M this weekend. They're at number 2, deservingly. Georgia number 3 after beating Auburn and Florida. I mean, Florida had quite a bit with that quarterback they have right now. Their offense is really flying. They're number 4. We have to look forward to this weekend. Clemson, who's number 1, faces off against Miami, number 7. It's De'Ara King versus Trevor Lawrence. That's going to be a phenomenal game. I'm looking forward to that. And really, if Clemson loses that, or if Miami loses, it's basically an elimination from the college football playoffs. Because no ACC teams can make the playoffs this year with a 1-loss record. So I think really this is a game for your season.
And the unfortunate part for them is then that comes against, well, you have to play the number one team in the nation for that.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the other way. If Miami went undefeated without playing Clemson, and Clemson was undefeated in the ACC, Clemson would still make the tournament. I'm sure an SEC team would make the tournament. There's a chance Miami would. So really, this is your best chance if you're Miami to go out there, actually make a name for yourself, and potentially make a shot at the college football playoffs. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this kind of opportunity.
And Sam Teets finds the silver lining.
Pretty much. I mean, let me put it this way, though. For the rest of college football, I think you're seeing some interesting things. Oklahoma's lost 2 straight games. So with Oklahoma's actually not in the top 25 right now. This is a team that usually has been competing for a spot in the college football playoffs. They're basically gone. Their season at this point might as well be over. LSU, we didn't get to talk about this because we didn't have a show at this time last week. LSU, the number one team in the nation, lost to an air raid offense in the SEC in their first week of play. They were number one. They were not number one in the nation. They were top 4 still after winning the college football championship last year. I said on a different show, not for your own truth, but on a different show, that they were in trouble and they ended up losing in their first game. And if anything, this shows the SEC, which is playing totally in conference schedule, is going to cannibalize itself because the SEC has a lot of good teams. They've got Georgia, Florida, Alabama. We talked about LSU, Texas A&M, Auburn. These are all very good teams because they have to play each other. They're going to end up eventually with one or multiple losses on their records, which is really going to hurt them when it comes time to picking the 4 teams for the college football playoffs.
And the college football playoffs are typically, how many weeks would you say it takes for you to tell who the 4 teams are going to be typically? Or at least you get a sense. 4
weeks. 4 weeks, usually 4 games in the year, you kind of know who's who. And look, college football can change at any moment. We just saw Texas lose to TCU. And Texas was top 10 team in the nation. TCU wasn't ranked. So this kind of stuff happens. But at the same point, really 4 weeks, you get to know the identity of a team. That being said, you can still lose any given week because it's college football, but 4 weeks and you have an idea of who's real, who's legitimate, and who's just faking you.
Yeah, and there you go. It's interesting. There are certain sports that seem to be a little bit less parity-filled than others, and I think college football seems to be a little bit more like the NBA, in which you can tell a little bit earlier on.
But it's another thing, though, because you can lose one game and you're done. It's not like that in the NFL. It's not like that in the NBA, certainly when they have 82-game regular season, or in the NHL or MLB. Lose one game in college football, and you are done. I mean, really, there's a chance this year because some conferences are starting late, you will see a 1-loss team in the playoffs, but usually it's an undefeated team or 2 undefeated teams and then 2 1-loss teams. You will never see a 2-loss team in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, and actually that might go a little bit in the sense of high school football as well. If you're trying to make it very far, like state championships and such, you can't have much of any losses, I would think.
Yeah, no, that's one of the similarities between the college and high school levels, depending on your level of competition. Really, you cannot afford to lose. I mean, maybe you get the 1 loss and you still eke it out, make it to wherever you're trying to go. But 1 loss is really a difference maker at either of those levels, and that's not the same for professional sports most of the time.
Yeah, and especially not, like you said, with the NBA or the NHL, who both have 82-game regular seasons. Losing pretty much means nothing.
Yeah.
Losing
you can afford to
a number of games can mean something, but
yeah. No, that's why in some of those for the NBA you see some teams rest their star players in the game. You can afford to lose games. Some teams have calculated on their schedule, we're not playing players in this game. We are going to lose this game because it benefits us in the long term to have our players healthy.
Yeah, and that's an interesting analytic to think about. We're going to choose when to lose because you're going to lose at some point in 82 games. It doesn't matter who you are. But when you're planning to lose, that is an interesting thing when you're not tanking.
And when you don't plan to lose, you can set a record like the Golden State Warriors did, but then you make it to the playoffs, you're gassed, and your players are getting banged up. And suddenly you're losing to LeBron James because you didn't plan to play a full. I mean, think about how many games it must be. 82 plus, if you're going to go all the way through the finals, play 4, let's say you swept everyone 4 games straight. You're still talking about a 16-game playoffs plus 82 games in the regular season, playing all that time. And that's as you swept everyone in the playoffs. It's really too much to ask for any NBA team to go through something like that without getting banged up and hurt. So really, you have to play when you're going to rest guys in leagues like that.
Yeah, it's just an interesting analytic there because, after 82 games, you'd expect someone to get hurt that's important, if not multiple people. But we'll move on to our next segment. This might very well be my favorite one. We got thinking or dreaming now. I'm going to let you go first this time. I went first last time, so we'll see for me.
All right, let's start off with the Lightning. They will repeat as Stanley Cup champions in 2021.
I'm not going to say it's impossible, which hurts me. But here's what I've got to say. 2 years ago, disturbing note of getting swept. Only team to win the President's Trophy and then get swept, not even having won a game in the playoffs. They're the first team in history to do that, not to mention tying the all-time wins record. I think it's fair for me at that point to have been disturbed and not trust that team as a result of that. However, ultimate redemption and going out the next year and then winning the cup, beating the same team you got swept by in 5. So the Lightning are certainly a contender in my mind now. I'm not going to – you don't even need to worry about it. They could potentially do something like they did in the past, but they are certainly back in my mind as a contender.
So I'm thinking then.
Yes, you are in fact thinking. That is it's not necessarily totally likely. Like, for instance, this year the Blues were probably still one of the higher-end contenders, and they lost earlier on in the tournament. So that can certainly still happen and not even necessarily be a choke, but you could just get beat.
Right. Well, that certainly you just get beat by any team and get upset. But I think the NHL is better. You're finding more upsets in teams in the league like the NHL than you would in the NBA. I know that the NBA is a league where you get very few upsets. I know the Nuggets beat the Clippers this year. That's probably one of the few exceptions, and maybe the Heat's entire run, basically. But I feel like the NHL has more upsets, I feel like.
Well, and with the Lakers, again, with the NBA and college football, earlier on. Take a look at last year, at least here's an example. Hello, the Blues were dead last early January, and they won the cup of that same year. That does not happen in college football or the NBA.
No, you have an idea of who's who. That's why you have for college football, you have preseason power rankings. That's why. Because you base everything on recruiting and schedules from previous seasons and stuff like that. And that's why Clemson is always there. That's why Alabama is always there. It's pretty easy to tell ahead of the year, most of the time, who's going to belong in the top 10, top 4.
All right. What's your second one for me?
The Detroit Lions should draft a quarterback.
So this is not – it's not dreaming, but it's not necessarily – let me break this down first. Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback. He had a good game today too against the Saints, who have a good secondary in your mind, yes?
Yeah, but you lost.
Granted, it's the Lions. They do that. You should never expect anything less than that. You should just expect that. However, Matthew Stafford, good. He's got years left in it. But it's not necessarily a bad idea to go out and take a quarterback now, especially if you lose a lot of games and can get a higher-end draft pick, and put him under the position of Matt Stafford and help him to learn. I mean, that's what Aaron Rodgers did with Brett Favre. So it's not a bad strategy. So you're actually thinking here, too. It's just I wouldn't necessarily start him right away because you've got Matthew Stafford.
I also think it matters what the new Lions head coach is going to want to do, when Matt Patricia gets fired.
Oh, he's going – you see, here's the thing. It's when. It's not if. It's when.
Yeah, it's sooner or later. We both acknowledge it's coming down the line eventually.
The sooner, just get him out. I don't know why he's still here. What's his record now that I'm thinking about it, like 9-25 or something, 9-26-1, something.
That's very bad.
That's horrible, by the way.
Oh yeah,
absolutely horrible.
I believe you have some questions for me.
Yes. The first one I have is the Minnesota Vikings season is over. They won't make the playoffs.
No, you're thinking. I mean, they're 1-3. That makes sense. It would have been a more correct statement to say the Houston Texans season is over. Because they're 0-4 right now, even though they have Deshaun Watson. I would have thought you would take a shot on a Clemson guy, but you didn't do that, so I'm grateful for that, McGinnis. But that's the point. You're right. The Vikings season's over.
Yeah, the Houston Texans season is over
Yeah.
too, by the way. Deshaun
Those
Watson.
Detroit Lions.
Absolutely. And my second one is the Eagles should have kept Foles. It's already
No. Listen to me. Listen to me. He's having one bad year. Nick Foles had 4 starts last year. 4. And didn't win any of them.
He got injured, correct? And he was on Jacksonville, correct?
And he got benched when he came back for Gardner Minshew.
Gardner
didn't even start this year. The Bears started Mitchell Trubisky over Nick Foles at the start of this year.
And now who's starting for the Bears? Remind me.
Nick Foles. And they just lost today. After the Indianapolis Colts scored 19 points.
Still an upgrade.
Soldier Field with Phillip Rivers.
Still an upgrade from Carson Wentz right now, who's been absolute garbage throughout this season. I think he has 6 interceptions to 3 touchdowns?
Something like that. The Eagles are winning the game, right now between the 49ers. They got an 8-point lead. Here's
the thing. Quarterbacks certainly help, but they're not necessarily the reason you win a game. I mean, hello, we saw this with, I'm trying to remember his name, Blake Bortles. 10-6 Blake Bortles.
Yeah.
Now, that might take a different kind of style of team, but I think when I was watching Nick Foles with the Eagles, he worked with the system better than that of Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I could potentially see that. I could see Nick Foles working better in the system than Carson Wentz. But at the same point, Nick Foles had opportunities to start in Philadelphia as well during the time because Carson Wentz had got some injuries. The issue with him, or with Nick Foles rather, is that he cannot play a full 16-game season and still play at a high level. He is great when he comes in for the second half of a game. He is great when you need him to finish off a 4-game stretch at the end of a year. He is not a 16-game regular season quarterback. He isn't. I mean, just look what happened today at Chicago. He really was, after he played phenomenal in that comeback win against Atlanta in the second half when they benched Mr. Trubisky, he came out and played a below-average game against Indianapolis today. The issue with him is that he is not a start-to-finish kind of quarterback. Carson Wentz for 3 years was that guy. I don't know if he'll be that good moving forward. He's been he's been horrible this year. But the Eagles are also only half a game out of first place in the NFC East.
Which says something about that division, by the way.
They are horrible. That whole division is awful. Washington and Dallas are tied at 1-3 for the lead, and Philadelphia is in second at 0-3-1.
And this is an odd thing to hear too, because I could be wrong, but they're going to be up there with one of the top divisions with the most Super Bowls.
What do you mean?
Combined between the 4 teams. The Giants have the Redskins. Do the Redskins have multiple or just?
I think they have. Washington has 1 or 2. I know they definitely have 1 because remember John Riggins. I think they have 2.
I'll lost you there. But, the Eagles have 1, and then Dallas has a few from their dynasty, so they all have Super Bowls. So it's interesting that entire division is garbage.
That division's been pretty garbage for a while here. It's not a shock, but
it's always.
Look, as long as no one's as bad as New York, the Giants are just terrible. But for some reason, that division just has all the bad teams in it, and they're all in major cities. They're all in big-time markets: Philadelphia, New York, Washington, Dallas. They're all in huge markets, and they all are terrible.
And for those of you who like conspiracy theories as to the team with the bigger market always wins, let this division be an example of not necessarily the case.
That's not true. Wait. Let's put it this way. When Seattle and Buffalo are undefeated and New York doesn't have – neither New York team has a win yet, I'm pretty sure. That just tells you.
For a while, by the way.
What?
I said and both have been bad for a while, by the way. So.
Oh, yeah. They've both been terrible for quite a while. For any new dynasties
that thinks the team with the bigger market always wins because the NFL skews games, the evidence is very much so against you at the moment.
Yeah, that's how it is right now.
All right, we'll move on to Flex of the Week.
Yeah, Flex of the Week. This is a little bit of a fun topic. I can't really show you anything for it. I can just tell you to go look for it. So TCU upset Texas this week. Texas was a highly ranked team. They were top 10 in the country. And if you don't follow college football, Texas Longhorn fans consistently say Texas is back. We're back. Our university's back. We're going to win football games again. We're going to compete for a national championship. It's been going on for over a decade now. They haven't won anything. And they just lost to TCU this weekend, which means Texas is now eliminated from the college football playoffs. Indefinitely, they're out. They're gone. They won't be back in the top 10, hopefully, for the rest of the year. And college football fans took to Twitter to acknowledge the fact that Texas is not back. And it was just funny to go search some of his tweets about people mocking whether Texas is back or not, because it's been a big statement. Everyone who was a Texas Longhorn fan always says Texas is back. This year, we're going to come back. We're going to be relevant again. And they never are. They're joining classic schools like USC and sometimes Miami and Notre Dame, these historic schools that had success in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s and have not been good or relevant in 20 years almost.
Well, now that also depends on your definition of relevant. If your definition of relevant is college football playoffs, okay, maybe not. But Notre Dame has been a good team. I mean, they've beaten U of M a couple of times in the last few years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Notre Dame has a couple of 10-win seasons. They did make the college football playoffs once recently. And then they scored 3 points, and Clemson scored like 63 in that game or something like that. The stats are, I'm pretty sure Clemson, in Clemson's last 2 meetings with Notre Dame has a total of 3 points. They got shut out once. They have a total of 3 points. Clemson has over 90 points in their last 2 meetings with Notre Dame.
It's just a giant gap.
Yeah, it's like 96, 93 to 3 is like the score between the last 2 games between Clemson and Notre Dame. So I'm talking about relevant. I mean, a school that could beat Clemson, a school that could beat Alabama, a school that could have beaten prime LSU. Not that I know that there was one. But certainly, like Miami's had 1 year where they made it to the ACC championship game. Notre Dame has had a couple 10-win seasons. But in terms of actual relevance, no.
Yeah, and as we've discussed, the schedule can have a lot to do with the college football team's success or failure. I know that can go for high school as well, having been on high school teams before. A schedule can mask how good a team is if they play a bunch of really easy teams, and then if they play one really good team, you can get exposed very quickly.
And that was the knock against Clemson in the past, especially this past year, because Clemson really didn't play anyone on their schedule at all. So people were saying, oh, Clemson's just skating to the college football playoffs and past success, and then they'll come into some real issues once they get there. They got there and they beat Ohio State, and they went and lost to LSU, but they beat Ohio State on the way there. They proved they're that good. The issue that we sometimes run into, you do have schools that will go undefeated from non-Power 5 conferences that try to get into the college football playoff and don't because they're not that good of teams. They just play bad competition. The issue we have this year is that the SEC is playing an in-conference schedule. The ACC is playing a huge in-conference schedule. So you see Clemson's going to play number 7 Miami. I think Notre Dame's number 5, and Clemson has to play them too eventually. And then the SEC, every team basically, like, they're playing ranked teams every week because Mississippi State will play a team like LSU one week, and we'll see Alabama play Texas A&M, and we'll see Florida play a bunch of competitive teams, and we'll see these teams that are all ranked. Georgia play Auburn. Ordinarily, all these teams would have had a shot in making the college football playoffs because they play each other. They're basically cannibalizing the SEC to the point where you're going to get 1 or 2 SEC teams who are competitive versus 5 or 4.
Well, and here's my thing. I would actually like to see more in-rank games because who likes watching a blowout as either a fan that isn't a fan of the team that is winning, just like an outside fan, or a fan of the team that's obviously losing? That's not fun. But who likes blowouts?
Yeah, who likes watching Clemson play the Citadel? I mean, look, Clemson has that one. Clemson has a 1 game every year against a non-major school. This year was the Citadel, and basically a non-major school is pretty much. They don't have their stats when you look at them on like ESPN. Their stats don't necessarily pop up. They're not even that relevant. Their school is often their offensive linemen are as big as our linebackers. It's really just it's usually what we wait our home opener for. We usually play our home opener against a non-major school like that, so we can go out there and just blow the doors off them, put on a great show for all the season ticket holders and all the fans that came down for the season opener. That's essentially how it goes. But you're right. Those games, they make a lot of money because of the attendance, because of the TV stuff, but at the same point, they're not fun to watch.
Yeah, very boring to watch a blowout unless you like watching blowouts for whatever reason. Who likes watching blowouts? I minus maybe the fan for the team.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like watching blowouts when Pittsburgh's playing. That's just mine. When the Steelers and Clemson are playing, blowouts are my favorites.
Yeah.
That means they don't have to stress.
For this person that has been talking about how great his school is for the past forever, he does happen to go to Clemson, by the way.
Yeah. That's the wrong side. Tiger. I'm a Clemson Tigers fan now because I have to be once you go to Clemson. There's really no option for it.
What else were you going to do? If you go to a college, you're automatically a fan of your own team. You literally
you can't not put it this way. You cannot not support the school, the team that you go to. You'll have no friends if you do that.
Do you have any friends anyway, though? They keep ditching on you.
You know, McGinnis, you don't listen to McGinnis here, okay?
Oh, sorry. I had to take a jab there. It was too easy.
Yeah, I know the door opened for you there. I shouldn't have let that go.
Yeah, you really shouldn't have. But you want to close this out today?
Yeah, we can close it out with this. Someone very important is listening to our show right now. The Detroit Lions have lost 6 straight games to the 14-point lead, plus the Bengals won.
Hold it. I got to read that. Yep.
Defend yourself, McGinnis.
I will say this. His whole thing about them winning a whole bunch of championships with Burrow isn't going to happen with this current team, but if they bolster it, it's possible. Because Joe Burrow has the potential to go there.
By bolster it, you mean sell the team to a family with a lot of money, fire the head coach, and get a actual scouting staff. You have to do a lot of changes there if you were going to
burn it and start from the ground up, maybe.
Well, outside of Joe Burrow, you don't want to burn. The issue is that Joe Burrow's getting hammered every week. That's the problem. I'm saying this. You cannot expect Joe Burrow to be healthy for his entire 5-year rookie contract if he's taking 6 or 7 hard hits every week. That's really the base issue with Cincinnati right now. The offensive line. If you fix the offensive line, their offense would be good enough to keep you in games, really. The issue right now is you cannot run block, you can't pass block. If you just fix that issue, you just had spent the money in the offseason on quality players or quality free agents, and you scouted properly instead of doing what they did, which would sign a bunch of guys or re-sign a bunch of guys who already had issues, you would be fine. The problem was they didn't do that. They didn't do their research. They didn't do the homework. They don't have the personnel in that organization to do that kind of stuff. And now look where they ended up.
And the other unfortunate thing about Joe Burrow taking hits is that's just the thing. I was watching the game today. He was intentionally taking hits. He wasn't shying away from them to not make the play. He's just making plays and getting hit.
Yeah, pretty much. And I believe this is a shot at me because I think Mike picked Cleveland this week, and I'm pretty sure I picked Dallas.
I laughed.
That puts
so hard.
That puts me in a bit of a hole. I think I'm 2 games back on Mike so far this season for picks right now. I was trying to get back into this week. We had a couple games we differed on, but it sounds like I got in a hole here. It sounds like the Browns pulled it off.
For what Mike is, if you even tie him, you should consider yourself impressed.
Yeah. I'm a couple games back right now. I'm hoping to get back in it. What's the score of the Eagles game right now? I know it was 8-0 last time I looked, but let's see what it is.
Yeah, we missed
8-7. Hey, Philadelphia's sticking with them. 8-7 since the second quarter. Philadelphia's right there.
But is Carson Wentz doing any good is the question. If he is, I'm going to be more happy.
Look, Carson Wentz has an interception already.
Okay. Just pointing out, Nick Foles would have been better to have stuck with the organization.
No, you're lying. You're incorrect.
From what I'm hearing from you, he kind of sounds like Ryan Fitzpatrick 2.0, though.
You deserve this.
I already discussed this. I will point that out.
You deserve this.
Tampa Bay, my hatred of you will remain. However, my respect for you is back. Coming back from that might be difficult, and you beat the team that you lost to. You went on and you did what you should have done in the first place. Well done. There. Confession gone.
Yeah? You done?
Yeah.
You're not done. We're going to drag this back up every single time we do this show.
I think every time we do the NHL – oh, wait a minute. No, not necessarily. So, fun fact of the day, folks. We're getting someone for the NHL show who works for Puck Talk. So, we'll have someone else that knows the NHL coming onto the show.
Hey, good for you. You have someone who understands it to talk about.
Yeah. So, when we talk goaltenders, he'll actually know what I'm speaking about. It'll It'll be amazing. See.
I followed that conversation, okay? I followed it perfectly.
All right, you want to close this out?
Yeah. We just remind you to check out the Grueling Truth Facebook page where we post all of our content there, articles, streams, shows. So feel free to go check that out. Look at the Grueling Truth as well. All of our stuff is there. It's a great site. I'm working there constantly trying to get new content out there, so we appreciate it if you go check out our website. And also check out our sponsor, Replenishing Care and Technologies, specifically the PEMF machine. Whether you're young or old, it can help you recover faster. Well, anyways, that's all for us tonight, folks. Thank you for watching this edition of the Sam and Sam Show. We'll be back next week, probably on Friday this time, because I screwed up the date. We're a little bit late for this show, but
yeah,
we'll try to get back on Friday next week. But thank you, everyone.